thank you for being here today on our AMA, on the Ask Me Anything. I have a number of questions. I'm going to go through them all. And if you are here live with me, you can ask me some questions and I'll respond to your questions first. We do the AMA every Thursday. The time has been changing a little bit because I've been traveling, but we're here anyways. I'm happy to be back in the U.S., back in the office, as you can see, and with all my stuff. So, without any further gas, let's get to some questions. Here's some questions regarding LLCs, and here are some LLC questions, right? When you fund them with a loan, can you pull in interest payments monthly tax-free? Well, if you have an LLC that is not paying taxes, then you don't have to do any tax withholding in the U.S. If you have a U.S. corporation that's paying interest to foreign people, then withholding is required technically by the U.S. corporation unless you have a treaty exclusion or some other, or it's portfolio interest. That's when it would not be, would have no withholding applied to it. So that's the first question really about the interest payments. Generally, if you have an LLC and you're not doing any trade or business in the U.S., you can kind of operate however you want in the U.S. because you have no taxes to pay here. So that's question one that we got here. What are you required to pay the owner/CFO of the company as a salary? If you have an LLC, the requirements of owner payments are kind of, they're not, I'm not really sure that there are requirements. When an owner owns an S Corp or a U.S. company, or there's a U.S. taxpayer and they have a certain company structure, they have reasonable compensation required for S Corp owners, but those are U.S. citizens only. You cannot own an S Corp if you're not a U.S. taxpayer, U.S. resident. So the required payments are zero. For example, I think like Mark Zuckerberg gets paid $1 a year. So that shows you the required salaries. There's no minimum in corporate scenarios or in LLC scenarios. And then there's another question I have here about loaning money to the LLC. You can basically contribute money to the LLC, add more, pull it, and add it however you please, because it doesn't pay tax and it's a disregarded entity. So it's it's not. There's no the loans, all the complicated loan stuff doesn't really matter. You really just contribute money to it and distribute money from it. And then the last question, is it correct as long as I don't pull money, it is not taxed? I don't know the tax rules in your jurisdiction, but in many jurisdictions, if you don't withdraw funds from the LLC and bring them to your home country, you don't pay tax in your home country. Depending on how you're operating your business, you won't pay tax in the U.S. either, but I don't really know the answer based on the facts in this first question. Here's a question. If interest is taxable, can I accumulate it to the principal loan to avoid being taxed? Or are there other forms to fund an LLC, like with bonds and dividends, like how life insurance dividends are not taxed? So how do I fund my LLC? You don't need to loan money to your LLC. You can just contribute money to your LLC. It doesn't have to be a loan, just a contribution and a distribution. There's no taxes associated with either of these. And it's not really a loan. If it's a loan, then you are going to have to like pay it back, and if it's technically a loan. But I wouldn't recommend you do that. It's overcomplicating the issue. You really can just send money to your account. No one even asks what it is. And just call it a contribution, especially for an LLC. For a corporation, there's different options and there's different things you can do, but the things you have to do, I guess. But with an LLC, it's much more simple, and don't overcomplicate it. Like insurance, dividends, bonds, like different kinds of stock options. Like that's not necessary for the majority of businesses. And if it's necessary for you, you should get a private consult, because these are high level things that aren't necessary for many people. So I have a great question here from the chat. Hello, James. For instance, when a bank like Mercury decides to close your account, how do you get your money? Do they allow you to retrieve it? They write you a check? So I can tell you what happens when Mercury closes your account. I can tell you from personal experience, because Mercury closed all my accounts like 2 weeks ago, and I had to deal with it. They were actually really helpful. They allowed an ACH transfer to another bank account that I had, and they facilitated it, and they sent it. It was free, and it went over fine. I even messed it up. I gave them the wrong routing number, and they were able to say, hey, it didn't go through. Give us the new route. I gave them the new number, and they all went through without an issue. So they'll voluntarily ACH you to another account. If you don't respond to that or you don't follow up, they're going to mail a check to the business address that you have on file. That's like the backup option. It's better if they can just wire it into an account that you already have. But if you don't have an account, then they're going to mail you a check, or if you don't respond. So it's not like your money's lost. They're not going to hold it like Stripe will if you get like some kind of Stripe dispute. The banks generally will give you your money, and they're not there. Unless there's like some kind of investigation or fraud or something, they're generally going to just give you your money. They're just exiting the business relationship because of their level of risk that they view in your operation in terms of like chargebacks and issues and just risk, because banks are very risk averse, and that's kind of their whole, the whole thing with the banks. Second question. This is a good question too. Does it make sense to have a foreign business as a second member of my LLC? Having another business as a co-owner, a second member, add complexity from a tax reporting perspective. So it does add complexity, sure. If you have an LLC and you have a Panama Corp, and your Panama Corp owns 1% of your LLC, it can provide additional asset protection. It can provide additional estate protection. For a regular operating business, if you're providing services or running an e-com store, it might not be necessary, but it might be necessary from an international tax perspective. For example, in your local jurisdiction, if it saves you taxes on your local jurisdiction, because you can attribute the profits of the now multi-member LLC between the partners as indicated in the operating agreement. Again, it's all much more complicated, and it makes sense for many people. But if you're just getting started, or you're doing some kind of service, it's really not necessary. I'm not going to suggest people do stuff that's overcomplicated unless it's going to benefit them more than it's complicating them. So that's a really good question. If I decide to open an LLC, is it possible to open a PayPal account for the company? And if yes, should I provide ITIN to PayPal at some point? So yes. How do I open a PayPal account for my LLC? So PayPal, like I mentioned in other videos, they want to work with local people. So if you are applying for a U.S. PayPal account, they want to know you're a U.S. person. And in my experience, they have asked for ITIN numbers. You can register without the ITIN number, but after you do a little bit of processing, they're going to want to validate your identity and to get more information from you. It doesn't always happen, but it very often happens. So, that's. I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments while I'm doing this. So that's what it is. So you should apply for an ITIN if you really need PayPal. You should apply for an ITIN because it has helped clients. It doesn't help every client. These platforms are finicky and they change constantly, but for now, I've seen that PayPal does want ITINs, and eventually, pretty quickly actually, and you need it to keep it open. And a great follow-up question for the banking. It says, where are we? Let's put this down. So we say here, why do banks like Mercury or AirWallex, which is not a bank, why do they not open accounts or decide how to close accounts? Levro worked, AirWallex didn't work. What are the risks they're worried for? So banks, this is not a professional opinion. I did get licensed for my AML, my anti-money laundering license. So I learned a lot about banks and their risk avoidance, but basically that's kind of it. So banks have their own scores for determining what's risky and what isn't risky, and what they want to avoid is high risk stuff. And the risk that they're scared of is people using their bank for money laundering, people using their bank for doing illegal stuff, because then that ties them into litigation, it ties them into wasting time, it ties them into having to deal with stuff that they don't want to deal with. It's like expensive stuff for banks. So banks want to work with people who run clean businesses, who run simple businesses, who keep a lot of money in their accounts and pose a low risk. So the risk is based on the type of business you're operating, based on and compared with like all the other factors. For example, like drop shipping is higher risk for payment processors because there's just a lot of returns. Professional services have lower risks for payment processors because you have a one-on-one relationship with all your clients. Like I don't get chargebacks. If someone wants a refund, they ask me and we figure it out and give them a refund. It doesn't really happen, but you know, it's not like they're going to charge back with the credit card. So that's how they determine risk, and that's that's my interpretation of how that works, that dynamic between avoiding risk and why they're avoiding risk, right? It makes sense too, right? It's all logical. It's just, and it's not my, these are just my observations and opinions. This isn't like professional advice, right? Okay. So I have another question from the slides here. I do not live or do business in USA. In October, I opened a single owner LLC in Delaware. Franchise taxes are up to date. Due to COVID, it was never used. Now I want to set up an online business. Need to apply for an EIN. The application asks for the startup date. I have never filed any return because the business has been done. Is there any, okay, so the question is, if I requested the EIN now, does it constitute a fault for having delayed requesting the EIN? So there's no penalty for getting your EIN number late. I guess that's the question. If I open the company 1 year and I get the EIN next year, is there a penalty? No, there's not a penalty. You didn't need it. If you didn't need it, you don't get it, and that's fine. And if they're asking for the start date of the business, that might actually be when you started doing business. I don't think it means the date of incorporation because they would list when was the business incorporated. You still need to include your organization docs with it anyways. But they're really asking when you started doing business on that form. But there's no penalties or anything for getting this later. If an LLC uses machines for videos, like a course, okay, and the place where you record the videos has a cost. I understand you contribute part of this cost to the LLC. And if the owner of the LLC is the owner of the machines and placement, the payment is a related party. It could be a problem. Yeah, this question is worded kind of clunky. If you have an LLC and you have a separate business that transacts with an LLC, and it's a foreign-owned single-member LLC, then that is a related party transaction that would be reported on Form 5472. So it's not. So I think that's it. I think that's it there. I'm a non-U.S. citizen with a company in the European Union. I'm planning to close it and open an LLC. I'm selling electronic products to U.S. customers only. I'm shipping from U.S. or Canada or China directly. As far as I know, this business, I can open an LLC without tax obligations in the U.S. Yeah, it sounds right. Sounds like you can open the company without tax obligations in the U.S. I mean, income tax. You definitely have to do sales tax obligations whether or not you open the company. And then there's follow-up mini questions here. Can I open a Mercury account and link it to PayPal? Yes. What's needed for PayPal? We just went over that, but you need the EIN for everything. And you need the ITIN as well eventually. Do you have to submit the required forms at the end of each year? Yes, you do. And they're asking if we do it. Oh yeah, of course. And do you offer the addresses and stuff? Yeah, of course. I was wondering if I can file a Form W-7 with an attached 1040 NR not in season, like now, to get an ITIN. Can I request an ITIN with protective filings of 1040? Yeah, when you file Form W-7, you need to attach generally. I know a guy who doesn't attach the 1040, but you need to generally attach a Form 1040 NR, and that would be a protective filing. That's generally the reason we use for doing the filings. I hired a freelancer to file Forms 5472, but I can't check if he actually filed because he made mistakes in the past. Is there a way I can directly check? You cannot check with the IRS if your Form 5472 is filed. They don't have a program for that, to my knowledge. This is a great question. I have an LLC and I want to file a W-8-BEN. In the fifth field, it asks for U.S. taxpayer identification number, SS10 or ITIN if required. But as a foreigner, I don't have it. Was it ever required? And it was never required, so I don't have that either. Can I fill that in with my company's EIN? Well, you don't fill it in. It says if required. So if it's not required because you don't have one. So you can't fill it in. So that's the the answer to that one. From your experience, how long does it take of opening the company and getting the required EIN and ITIN numbers? Well, if you just need the company and the EIN, the company can be quick depending on the state. The EIN can take 1 to 3 weeks generally. It might require you to call a couple times, and the ITIN takes 2 to 7 months. I used to say 3 to 6, but I extended it to 7 because they are the worst. So that's what that takes. I mean, obviously using it, saying compliance, having addresses, other stuff. There's a lot of other things that go into it, but those are the timelines it usually takes, in my experience. Some states are faster than others, but they're all generally pretty quick. At one point, though, Delaware was taking like a month and a half to open companies. So that's one of the big reasons we've stayed using Wyoming as our, private jurisdiction of choice. Wyoming, yeah. When is the due date for multi-member LLC income tax returns? Well, the due date is March 15th, and if you file a 6-month extension, the due date is September 15th. And that's what I'm busy doing right now all day, is filing these forms, these Corporate Transparency Act forms. No, these partnership tax returns. I'm sorry, I'm reading the questions too. Filing these partnership tax returns, and on there we have to include financials, the ownership of the partners, the K2 and the K3 are new. There's a lot that we're including in these forms, and we have to get them going. So if you need help with this, let us know and we can get it done still in time. How is the process for changing the address of your LLC based in New Mexico? It's annoying. New Mexico's back office isn't very good in my experience. They're very slow and it takes forever, but it's just like filing a piece of paper. It's not anything too crazy. There's one thing I want to share you guys. It's not in the questions that I thought was really cool. Basically, the title would be Facebook is withholding taxes on my ad spend. And what I determined, I have a client who is, they have a New Mexico LLC and they're paying for Facebook ads. They're based out of Germany and, they're paying for Facebook ads. They're promoting their products. And on all of the ads, there's a 7.5% sales tax on there. And it's for the purchase of ad spend. And I was trying to figure out what it was. And I've determined that Hawaii and New Mexico both charge a GST, a general sales tax, on ad revenue, on ad spend. So because this client is using their New Mexico address instead of our office address, which we're changing and fixing, they're paying $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month in this sales tax that they could otherwise avoid if they had an address outside of New Mexico. So that's a reason not to use a New Mexico company, because they have a general sales tax applied to marketing ad spend. So if you're going to pay an extra 7.5% if you are running ads using a New Mexico address and company. So there's a reason not to use New Mexico. You saved your $100, $60 a year on your renewal, but now you're paying 7% on all your ad spend. So that was Hawaii and New Mexico were the states that I saw. There's a number of foreign countries that are like that as well, but I don't know. That was something really interesting I wanted to share with you guys. So if you are paying sales taxes or sales taxes for your ad spend to Facebook, it might be because you have a New Mexico mailing address and company. I've been asked a couple of times, is there a downside to getting an ITIN number if you're a foreign person? The downside is that you have to pay for someone to help you with it, and it takes a while to get. Once you have it, it's just like, it doesn't mean anything. It just allows you to file a tax return. In case you need it, you have it. If you don't need it, you have it. Nothing lost. So the downside is that you have to pay for it and wait for it. There's potential upside if you need it. If you don't need it, then there's no reason to get it. The problem is that if you might need it and you can't get it quickly. So that's why that's why for all of our clients, we're generally getting an ITIN just in case they need it. So we have it. how to determine how much sales taxes you have to pay. So I want to talk about sales taxes a little bit because I've been getting a lot of questions about sales taxes. Generally, sales taxes are only charged on the sale of products delivered into a state in the U.S. They're going to only generally pay sales taxes on a sale of products or on a sale of a service that was delivered within a state. So if you are a carpenter and you're performing carpentry services in a state, that state may charge you for those services. Um, but if you're a non-resident, you generally don't pay any sales taxes on any kind of services. It's only if you're delivering something into the state. So that's something I've been getting asked a lot. Jim, what about my sales taxes? I say, you guys are doing marketing services, you're doing copywriting, you don't have to pay sales taxes because you are not, you just don't have to. And there's a lot of resources online, but I want to keep reiterating that a little bit. Oh, here's one. I'm selling books on Amazon with my foreign-owned single-member LLC. My country has no tax treaty, which means Amazon withholds 30% royalties on my sales in the U.S. market. Is there any way to reduce that to zero and claim back the withholdings from the past? So I've successfully done this. I didn't claim back all withholdings, but I've helped my clients file tax returns that claim they have a U.S. trade or business. So basically they pay tax at the graduated rates. So if you make 30,000, let's say you make $100,000, instead of, you had 30,000 withheld, but your actual tax will be like 16. So you'll get like a $14,000 refund. So, we can still get some money back depending on your tax bracket. If you made $10 million, then you actually might owe money. So because the rates go up to 37%. But for most of my clients and people I've worked with, there's some money to get back. So if you have withholdings, we can probably potentially get some back. And to answer your original question, is there any way to get it to zero? It's by having a U.S. company. If you have a U.S. corporation or a U.S. partnership, you fill out a W-9 and Amazon stops withholding. This gets you into a gray area where you kind of have, if you have a multi-member LLC and this isn't being withheld, technically, I believe you would potentially be subject to paying some of these taxes. However, depending on the scale and your risk tolerance, it can be done in a number of different ways. What I have some people I've worked with who have done in the past will open a corporation and then they'll pay themselves, fees, they'll pay themselves commissions, they'll pay themselves professional fees for their services rendered to the corporation. So that if you get royalties of 100,000, you pay yourself 97,000. You're only paying income tax on 3,000 that's left in the company. So there's different ways to organize this correctly, illegally, and manipulate it so that you are paying way less than 30%. So there's ways to do it depending on your scale and how much you're selling and stuff. These might make good options. I hope you're selling a lot. Reach out to us if you have this issue, and we can help you get it fixed right away. Can you recommend what is my recommended? The question is, what is the recommended credit cards for non-residents? So I can answer this with experience of helping non-residents sift through this a lot. The best credit card is the Amex credit card for non-residents. However, it's not like a guaranteed thing. It's very difficult. There's a lot of student credit card options. Many of them will want an ITIN, and almost all of them want some kind of proof of physical address. And that's really what the issue is for many of these credit cards. They want to know that you're living in the U.S. so that they can, justify giving you this credit and, be confident that you'll pay them back. The U.S. credit system is really run on a credit score that people get as they have credit and they build it and they develop it. They pay on time. You get debt, you pay it off. Your credit score improves and you're eligible for more credit. If you're a non-resident, you have no credit score, you have no history, and these very profitable credit card companies don't have an incentive to give you a credit card. The best options is coming into a Bank of America or a Citibank or a Capital One and getting a secured credit card. A lot of that has to be done in person. I wish I had better options for doing this, but I don't. And I've been researching it a lot, and not only researching but practically experimenting with different clients and colleagues to see what we can apply for. And it's not an easy thing, but if you do qualify, I would definitely recommend Amex's, especially if you're from the UK or Canada or Mexico or India. You can use your credit score from those countries, but you again need to technically be moving to the U.S. or having moved to the U.S. And then they're going to mail your credit card to the home address you use. So if you make one up, that's where the card's going to go, and you have to order a new one. Paul says, what are the recommended bank accounts for non-U.S. LLC owners? If Mercury closing accounts is not the preferred option anymore, I still like Mercury. I'm not against them. I would still open an account with them, and I would still use them. I had a number of accounts and was in a number of different businesses and do a lot of different transactions. And I was almost saying pushing it a little bit to see how much I can, like what their thresholds were. And what ultimately happened is that I was I have just a lot of companies, and I had an LLC Stripe account and a different LLC name going to a different bank account, and that just tipped it over. That would put me over the risk threshold. So basically, I have like James Baker LLC Stripe account, and it went to a James Baker USA Corp, whatever bank account. The Stripe went to that bank, and the ACH just didn't match up, and that was the trigger ultimately. I would still recommend you use Mercury. It's a great bank, and I didn't lose money. They just kicked me out after like many. I had some of those accounts open since like 2016. So I would still recommend it. And Relay Financial is another great bank, and those are great because you don't have to travel to the U.S. Chase and physical banks aren't great either. I mean, I have a client right now whose account got locked with Chase. He's in Colombia, and he can't get it unlocked. He can't access his funds, and he cannot get into his account. He has to fly to the U.S. and fix it that way. So, online, all banks can close your accounts. I've had accounts closed at Chase too. All banks can close the accounts. However, I like Mercury because they are online. You never have to go to a branch. Like this client who we're trying to figure out how to get him into the branch to get this account fixed because it's been a mess, and we have to figure it out. Okay, I have time for like one more question because I do have another call, and I already botched this whole meeting today with not recording it. I think I only answered questions for people who were here in person anyways. So, they got their answers. I'm going to jump to, no, I think I'm doing a Spanish call tomorrow. So if you're not on the Telegrams and the Discords and stuff, you should join. You guys probably are, but I'm going to be doing a live call only in Spanish tomorrow with another group. And I'll promote it here so you guys can join too. And we're going to be answering a number of their questions in Spanish only. So I'm trying to just answer English questions today on this call. Marketing. So yeah, the state of marketing right now in online marketing, what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients, the content marketing is still, there's always marketing services. And I saw that the webinars have slowed down, but they're not dead. People are still marketing webinars to sell high ticket services. People are, and I welcome your comments. I've seen many people still advertising for drop shipping, like Facebook ads to sell products, but that's going down a little bit. A lot of people are really moving to Amazon using the local platform, the local ad credits in terms of marketing for e-commerce, but marketing for services is still very reputational based. And what I've seen with the my experience with many of my clients is that there's a lot of opportunity with joint ventures and affiliating with people and doing stuff like that. So it's cool. Those are my comments on marketing that I've seen recently. And we got one last question for John. Oh, cool, Paul. Yeah. Invite only FBA seller. That's awesome. Yeah, you should definitely do it. The LLC model is amazing. And again, it just diversifies you a little bit because then you can, it's just good to have more options. I'm always about options, more ways to get paid, more ways to, more places to put your money. So your business never shuts down permanently. It's always, if there's a hiccup, it's something you can resolve quickly. All that administrative stuff. So, and the LLC is great because there's all the stuff we can fix pretty quickly if anything happens. And most of the clients are in the U.S. You save on exchange rates. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. Okay, guys, I'm going to get going. Look forward to talking to you further, Paul. I think we can definitely help you with that stuff. A lot of the clients doing really great in Amazon. But thank you all for being here today. I'm going to get back to, I'm driving back to Texas. I'm here just getting set up, but I'm going to be set up to be really consistent going forward with these calls. I really like doing them, and hope you enjoyed it. Okay, I'll see you all later.